Have you ever wondered why happiness seems to come so easily to some, while others search for it their entire lives, never quite finding it? What if the reason you're stuck isn't fate or bad luck, but something far more personal, something you're avoiding? In this journey, we won't sugarcoat life, we'll confront it, because only through truth can we build the life we're truly meant to live. Happiness isn't a prize you stumble across. It's something you build, layer by layer, truth by truth. But here's a truth most people never say out loud. Before you can start building that kind of life, you have to stop pretending that nothing stands in your way. It's not always fate. It's not always bad luck. More often, it's denial. We spend years protecting ourselves from discomfort, wrapping reality in layers of distraction, justification, and half-truths. We scroll, we avoid, we rationalize, all in the name of staying comfortable. But growth doesn't bloom in comfort. It takes root in confrontation, the quiet, honest kind. The kind that forces us to face the truths we'd rather ignore, but absolutely need to see. Without acceptance, there is no clarity. Without clarity, there is no peace. And that's why this episode isn't about making life look pretty. It's about uncovering what's real. These aren't motivational quotes to put on a coffee mug. They're truths that are meant to wake you up. Some will sting. Others will challenge your pride. A few might even make you squirm. But that's the point. Truth is rarely gentle, but it's always freeing. Because once you stop running from it, everything begins to shift. Today we'll walk through 12 harsh truths, not to discourage you, but to empower you, to help you stop waiting for life to fix itself, to stop blaming, stop hiding, and start living with your eyes wide open and your heart ready. Not flawlessly, but honestly. Not without pain, but with power. Because happiness isn't something you find. It's something you choose. And truth, that raw, unfiltered truth, is the ground where happiness takes root. You're not that important. I know. It sounds like an insult, like a blow to your ego. But what if this is actually your first taste of freedom? We spend so much of our lives imprisoned by perception. We analyze every awkward moment. We avoid risks, fearing what others might think. We live under the heavy illusion that the world is watching, judging, remembering our every misstep. But here's the liberating truth. Most people aren't thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves, their worries, their flaws, their image, just like you. And it's not selfishness. It's simply human nature. Each of us is the protagonist in our own story, navigating a world that feels deeply personal but is, in reality, mostly indifferent. And when you understand this, something beautiful happens. You're free. Free from the imaginary spotlight. Free from the pressure to impress. Free from the exhausting need to explain, to prove, to protect. Free to simply be human, flawed, evolving, real. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor who ruled one of the greatest empires in history, once wrote, "You shouldn't give circumstances the power to rouse anger, for they don't care at all." He wasn't being harsh, he was being honest. And that honesty, it's where peace begins. In the next chapter, we'll explore another truth that may feel equally uncomfortable, but no less necessary. You're going to die. Sound intense? It is. But it just might be the wake-up call you've been needing. Marcus Aurelius wasn't just being honest, he was being wise. The world doesn't stop because of your embarrassment. It doesn't revolve around your mistakes. Life moves forward, always, and so should you. But often we don't. Why? Because deep down, we all want to matter. We want to believe that our actions carry weight, and that desire is completely human. But meaning doesn't come from being remembered. It comes from being fully alive, from showing up even when no one's watching, especially when no one's watching. It comes from making peace with the fact that most people will forget what you said, what you wore, even what you achieved. But you won't forget how you lived. So what if you stopped trying to impress and started living with intention? What if you stopped editing your life for an audience that isn't even paying attention and started writing it for the one person who'll live every line of it? You? This truth isn't here to shrink you. It's here to set you free. Because once you let go of the need to be important, something powerful begins to happen. You become bold enough to fail, brave enough to speak, humble enough to grow. You stop fearing judgment, not because it no longer exists, but because it no longer controls you. Ask yourself how much of your energy goes into managing how others see you, and what would your life look like if you redirected that energy inward, toward becoming someone you truly respect, whether anyone notices or not. Because at the end of the day, what matters most is not that everyone remembers your name, but that you never forget who you are. Not everyone is going to like you. Have you ever bent yourself out of shape just to be accepted? It starts small. You laugh at a joke you don't find funny. You stay silent when something feels off. You say yes when your whole body wants to scream no. And at first it feels harmless. You tell yourself you're just being nice, easygoing, agreeable. But over time the cost adds up. You're trading pieces of yourself for approval that doesn't last. The truth may sting, but it's necessary. Not everyone is going to like you. No matter how kind, thoughtful, generous, or careful you are, there will always be someone who misunderstands you, criticizes you, or simply chooses to walk away. And that's not a defect in you. That's just life. People aren't reacting to your essence. They're reacting to their own lens, their fears, insecurities, and personal stories. You were never meant to carry the burden of managing all that. Epictetus said it plainly. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. If your growth, your truth, your peace makes someone else uncomfortable, they might resist it. They might even resist you. But growth means accepting that. It means choosing not to be everyone's favorite because you're finally becoming your own. Even nature teaches us the same truth, just in different words. In the last section, we accepted a hard but liberating truth. Not everyone will like you, and that's perfectly okay. In fact, that's where your freedom begins. Throughout history, the individual has always had to fight to remain true to themselves amidst the pull of the tribe. There's a constant, quiet pressure. Be agreeable, blend in, don't ruffle feathers. And it's tempting, isn't it? Because belonging feels safe. But what we often call connection is sometimes just silent conformity. The cost of trying to be universally approved? You begin to disappear, not physically, but spiritually. You shrink yourself to fit others' expectations and label it love. But it's not love. It's performance. It's exhausting. So what's the way out? Radical honesty, not the kind that's abrasive or cruel, but the kind that refuses to pretend. The kind that says, I'd rather be misunderstood for being real than celebrated for being fake. This is the kind of honesty that becomes the birthplace of authentic confidence. Confidence that isn't built on applause, but on presence, on showing up as you truly are, and trusting that it's enough. And here's the beautiful part. When you stop trying to be liked by everyone, you finally create space for the right people to find you. The ones who see you, not your persona. The ones who resonate with your truth, not your presentation. The ones who challenge you, respect you, love you, and still let you be you. So ask yourself, are you designing your life to be admired or to be lived? Because every time you dilute your truth for the comfort of the crowd, you lose another piece of who you were meant to be. But every time you stand in your truth, even if it's awkward, even if it shakes the room, you take a step closer to freedom. Not everyone will like you. That's not failure. That's reality. And the moment you accept it is the moment you reclaim your self-respect. You are not defined by what you have. What happens when the spotlight fades, when the applause stops, when the title on your desk or the likes on your feed are no longer enough to impress anyone, not even yourself? In a world that screams your worth is measured in digits, your salary, your house, your following, it's easy to forget who you were before the numbers. You start to confuse your identity with your possessions. You begin to believe that your value lies in your resume, your clothes, your car. Slowly and quietly, you may find yourself building a life that looks full but feels empty. But here's the truth. You are not what you have. You are what you live. You are the beliefs you hold when no one's watching, the kindness you show when there's nothing to gain, the integrity you uphold even when no one's there to praise it. Seneca, a man who held wealth, power, and influence, yet saw the emptiness in all of it, once wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." That craving, the constant reaching, needing, comparing, is what we've been trained to chase. We collect things hoping they'll fill the void. We chase image hoping it'll quiet the self-doubt. But it never truly does, because what we're aching for isn't another possession. It's peace, not the kind you buy, but the kind you find when you realize you don't need more to be whole. Carl Jung put it perfectly. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Why terrifying? Because it requires you to stand bare before your reflection, to strip away the titles, the trophies, the image, and ask, am I enough without it all? Most people avoid that question their entire lives because it forces them to confront a deep fear that without the job, the house, the admiration, they might be nothing. But that fear, it's a lie. You are not your possessions. You are your principles. You are your compassion. You are how you treat people when no one's watching and how you speak to yourself when you're all alone. In the next chapter, we'll continue with a truth that touches us all. You can't change people. Why does this matter so much? And how can accepting it protect your peace? Let's explore. Previously, we explored how your worth isn't defined by your possessions, but by what you've overcome and who you choose to become. Now let's take that power one step further. True value doesn't shout. It doesn't flash or demand to be noticed. It's quiet. It's found in the way you show up when life gets messy. Not because someone's watching, not because it earns you applause, but simply because it's the right thing to do. And the irony is this. The moment you release your grip on defining yourself by what you own, you begin attracting what truly matters. Respect, real connection, inner peace, not because you're chasing them, but because you're aligned, living from a place of truth rather than image. Pause for a second and imagine, what would your life feel like if you no longer needed to impress anyone? If you no longer carried the quiet shame of lacking what others have? What if, instead of constantly asking, how much is enough? Зрение вы спросили, что на самом деле достойно моего времени, моей энергии, моей жизни? That's the shift. That's what freedom looks like. So here's the challenge. Take an honest look at the parts of your identity tied to your image. Are they really you or just armor? What would it feel like to set some of that armor down? To stop performing and start simply being? Because real worth doesn't sparkle. It isn't measured in followers or net worth or recognition. It's etched into your choices, the ones you make when no one's watching. You are not what you have. You are what you've endured, what you believe in, and who you're becoming. You always have a choice. How often do you forget that you're free? not in a legal or political sense, but in a deeper, more personal way. The freedom that doesn't depend on your surroundings, but lives in your response. Because while you can't always control what happens to you, you can always control what happens next. That space between what happens and how you respond, that's where your power lives. And the painful truth is, most people give it away without even realizing it. When life hits hard, when your plans crumble, when someone walks away, when it all feels unfair, it's easy to fall into a trap. Your mind whispers a lie over and over. I have no choice. But that's not the truth. That's fear, dressed up as logic, because you always have a choice. Maybe not over everything, but always over something. Your tone, your thoughts, your focus, your next step. Epictetus understood this well. He wrote, "Man is not worried by real problems so much as by his imagined anxieties about real problems." In other words, it's not just the pain that crushes us, it's the stories we tell ourselves about the pain. This shouldn't be happening. This always happens to me. I'll never get through this. But those aren't truths. They're interpretations, beliefs we often absorb unconsciously. And the beauty of choice, it can be reclaimed anytime, anywhere. Even in chaos, you can ask, what do I still control? What can I choose right now, even if it's small? Carl Jung once said, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. Read that again. That's the dividing line between being life's victim and being its author. Yes, things will happen that you didn't deserve. Pain will visit uninvited. But what you do with that pain, how you grow from it, rise through it, transform beyond it, that part belongs to you. And here's one more thing we forget. Indecision, it's a choice too, a silent one. The choice to wait, to stall, to hope life changes before you do. In the next section, we'll explore another difficult truth that many resist. You can't change people. What does this mean for your peace, your boundaries, and your healing? Let's dive in. In the last section, we explored how freedom often begins with a quiet decision, a single choice that changes everything. Now let's shift the focus inward to the hidden source of many of our struggles, our thoughts. Every time you choose silence over truth, fear over courage, or familiarity over freedom, you're still making a choice, choosing to hold back, choosing not to act, choosing to shrink. These moments may not feel dramatic, but they shape the entire landscape of your life. And here's the difficult part to admit. If you're not mindful, your life slowly becomes a mosaic of things left undone. Not because you weren't capable, but because you forgot that you had a choice. You forgot that even in stillness, even in hesitation, you were choosing. But choices aren't always loud. Sometimes they're gentle, almost invisible. Like choosing to take a breath instead of reacting. Choosing to speak up instead of staying quiet. Choosing to walk away from something familiar that no longer serves you. Choosing each day to show up not as the person you've been, but as the person you're becoming. So here's a question worth asking. In that situation that's weighing you down right now, what are you pretending you don't have a choice about? And what might change, internally or externally, if you reclaim just one small part of that power? Not all of it, just the first step. Because real freedom doesn't always look like escape. Sometimes it looks like ownership. Sometimes it's just the quiet strength of saying, I may not be able to fix the world, but I can choose how I meet it today. Your feelings are caused by your thoughts. Here's a question that can change everything. What if your pain isn't actually caused by what happened, but by the story you told yourself about it? It's a tough truth, because when we're hurting, the mind races to find something or someone to blame. The harsh comment, the rejection, the failure, the loss. We say, that's why I feel this way. But is it really? When you look closer, you'll find this. The emotion didn't come from the event itself. It came from your interpretation of the event, and that changes everything. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." You don't experience the world as it is. You experience it through the filter of your beliefs. If that filter is smudged with fear, shame, or resentment, then every moment gets colored by it. You're not reacting to what actually happened. You're reacting to what you think it meant. And here's what most people miss. That meaning often comes from old wounds, not present truth, from past experiences whispering into today's reality. Think about it. Two people can face the same rejection. One feels crushed, the other feels redirected. One spirals into despair, the other grows more focused. What changed? Not the event, the thought, the inner story, the lens. This isn't about suppressing emotion. It's about getting honest about where it starts. Because once you understand that your thoughts create your feelings, you unlock something extraordinary, the ability to change them. You can interrupt the thought, you can question it, you can rewrite it, you can choose a lens that aligns with who you want to be, not just who you've been conditioned to be. Let's say you didn't get the job, the relationship, the outcome you hoped for. Your mind might say, "I'm not good enough." That thought becomes shame. But what if you paused and asked, "Is that really true? Or is that just my old fear speaking again?" You could choose a different perspective. Maybe that opportunity wasn't aligned. Maybe it's a blessing in disguise. Maybe this isn't rejection, but redirection. Suddenly, the emotion begins to shift. Not because the facts changed, but because your relationship with the facts changed. That's the difference. And here's one more truth. The brain craves familiarity. It's wired to repeat the same patterns, even painful ones, because they feel safe. But when you become aware of that wiring, you gain the power to change it. In the next part, we'll explore a deeper challenge many of us face. You can't change people. Why learning this truth may be the most liberating and difficult lesson of all. Previously, we uncovered how your thoughts create your emotions and how reclaiming the lens through which you view your experiences can be your greatest source of power. But what happens when we shift from the internal to the external? When it's no longer just about thoughts, but actions and the responsibility behind them? The mind is tricky. It will cling to familiar narratives, even painful ones, because they feel safer than the unknown. If you've spent years believing a story like, "I always fail," your brain will seek out evidence to confirm it. Not because it's true, but because it's familiar. That's the trap, and the only way out is awareness. This is why reframing your thinking isn't a one-time breakthrough. It's a practice, a discipline, a quiet, continuous act of courage. Every single day, you're either reinforcing your old story or rewriting a new one. And that rewriting begins in moments of emotional friction. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, anxious, angry, or drained, pause, just pause. Don't immediately react. Instead, become curious. Ask yourself, what am I thinking right now that's fueling this feeling? Is it true? Is it useful? Is there a more empowering thought I could believe instead? Because if you want to feel different, the change doesn't begin when life shifts. It begins the moment you shift your story. If you don't learn to be accountable, you will be held accountable. Let's face it, it's easier to blame the world than to confront our own choices. It's easier to point fingers at people, luck, the system, than to turn the mirror inward. But deep down, we often know the truth. Many of the outcomes in our lives come not from betrayal or fate, but from the decisions we made or refused to make. Have you ever blamed the world for a life you quietly chose? A job you stayed in too long? A relationship you settled for? A routine you never questioned? It happens to all of us. But ownership begins when you admit this. Somewhere along the line, I made a choice, and now I'm living with the consequences. Accountability isn't about shame. It's not about punishing yourself. It's about reclaiming your power. Because here's what most people miss. The moment you stop waiting for someone else to rescue or redeem your life, your healing begins. The moment you stop blaming your childhood, your past partner, or your circumstances, your power returns. Why? Because as long as you see yourself as a victim, you are powerless to build a new future. Nature put it simply, freedom is the will to be responsible to ourselves. Real freedom doesn't mean doing whatever you want. It means understanding the impact of your actions and being willing to carry that weight without excuses, without projecting, without outsourcing the cost of your choices to others. And here's the hard reality. Life will hold you accountable, whether you're ready or not. If you avoid your health, your body will remind you. If you neglect your relationships, resentment will build. If you abandon your truth, your peace will slowly erode. Life is patient, but also brutally honest. What you refuse to face today becomes the wake-up call you can't avoid tomorrow. But here's the good news. Accountability doesn't require perfection. It only requires honesty. It requires the courage to say, I messed up, but I'm ready to do better. That's not weakness. That's strength most people never develop. Because blaming is easy, building is hard, and nothing grows in blame. Growth needs light, and that light is called truth. So ask yourself, what area of your life feels out of control right now? Your money, your mental health, your sense of direction? Then ask this, without judgment, how have I been contributing to this? What choices have I been avoiding? What small step can I take today that points toward change? Because that's all accountability is. It's not self-punishment, it's self-leadership. It's saying, I may not have created all of this, but I am responsible for what happens next. And once you step into that truth, fully, humbly, and consistently, your life begins to shift. Not in an overnight transformation, but in steady, honest steps. One choice at a time, one moment of truth at a time, one refusal to look away from the mirror at a time. In the next section, we'll explore the emotional liberation that comes from finally accepting this. You can't change people. You can inspire, support, and influence, but in the end, their path is theirs to walk. Sometimes choosing accountability is uncomfortable, but when you don't choose it consciously, life has a way of choosing it for you, often in harsher ways. That leads us to harsh truth number 7. People want you to do well, just not better than them. Think back to a moment when you started doing something new, something bold, unfamiliar, something that pushed you forward. At first, the people around you probably smiled. They said they were proud. They applauded your baby steps. It felt like support, and maybe in the beginning, it truly was. But then, as your steps became strides, something shifted. The cheers faded, the smiles tightened, the jokes came with a sting. Suddenly, you weren't just someone trying, you were someone doing. And your growth, instead of being inspiring to everyone, began to make some people uncomfortable. This is one of the hardest truths in personal growth. Not everyone will celebrate your evolution. And often it's not because they wish you harm, but because your rise reminds them that they've stayed still. Your progress holds up a mirror they'd rather not look into. Your momentum challenges their inertia. And instead of confronting their own discomfort, some people shift it back onto you. Through doubt, silence, passive resistance. Seneca once said, As long as you live, keep learning how to live. But learning in this way, through becoming, through leveling up, requires leaving something behind. Sometimes it's a mindset. Sometimes it's an environment. Sometimes it's people. Carl Jung likened relationships to chemical reactions. When two elements interact, both are changed. Growth introduces friction, and if the dynamic can't evolve with you, it will try to contain you. So how do you respond when this happens? Do you hide your wins to keep the peace? Do you shrink to stay palatable? Do you dim your brilliance so others won't feel insecure? It might feel like loyalty, but often it's quiet self-abandonment. Every time you choose comfort over expansion, you trade your future for someone else's approval. True connection doesn't demand your stagnation. It celebrates your stretch. It claps for you, not only when you start, but when you soar. Yes, that kind of support is rare, but it's worth seeking, and more importantly, worth becoming. Because when you cheer for others without competition, you break the cycle. You rise and you raise others with you. So ask yourself, are you making yourself small to keep relationships intact? Are you calling it humility when it's really fear? Are you staying safe because you fear what growth might cost you? The truth is, you might outgrow circles, titles, patterns, even people, but you'll never outgrow your own potential. And when you honor that, you attract the people who fuel your fire, not those who fear it. Now that we've uncovered this painful yet freeing truth, let's explore what's keeping so many of us stuck in place: the illusion of the perfect time. Just as we explored how waiting for approval can dim your growth, there's another illusion that quietly steals our momentum: the idea of the perfect time. We've all said it. I'll start when I'm more prepared. I just need to figure things out first. Or the classic, once I feel ready. But here's the truth. There is no perfect moment. There never has been, and there never will be. And the longer we hold out for it, the more our life gets postponed in the name of silent hesitation. The idea of perfection is a moving target, one we chase not to reach it, but to avoid risk. Because as long as we can tell ourselves we're not ready, we don't have to face uncertainty. We don't have to risk embarrassment, failure, or disappointment. We stay safe, but we also stay stuck. Every dream you carry, every version of yourself waiting to emerge, doesn't live in your thoughts. It lives in your actions. In that first imperfect step, not the polished plan, Epictetus, with his unflinching clarity, once asked, "How long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself?" That's not a motivational slogan. That's a wake-up call. How many times have you masked avoidance with the label of preparation, told yourself you needed more time when what you really needed was courage? Let's be honest. The fully ready version of you, the one who's fearless, flawless, fully equipped, is a myth. Confidence doesn't come before action. It comes from action. You leap, you stumble, you learn. And that's how courage is built. We wait for clarity, not realizing that clarity only comes through motion. We wait for signs, not realizing that the very act of starting is the sign. In every messy beginning and shaky first attempt, the path starts to appear. You will doubt yourself. You will make mistakes. You will want to quit. But you will also discover resilience you never knew you had. Growth isn't promised, but transformation is. So ask yourself this: what dream are you deferring while you wait for conditions to be perfect? And who might you become if you stopped waiting and started moving? Because life won't pause for your hesitation. And regret doesn't come from failing. It comes from never giving yourself the chance. There is no perfect time. There's only now. And now is always the most honest place to begin. In the next section, we'll confront a truth most of us quietly suffer with: the constant comparison game. and how to finally step out of it and reclaim your peace. Coming from the realization that comparison distorts more than it informs, we arrive at a deeper truth. Comparison is rarely rooted in reality. It's almost always a trick of the eye, a mirage shaped by curated images and filtered lives. You're measuring someone's best angle against your behind-the-scenes footage, their carefully edited highlight reel against your raw, unfiltered reality. And in that unfair comparison, you begin to doubt your worth. But what you don't see, their anxiety hiding behind the accomplishment, their loneliness beneath the beauty, the heavy cost of the perfection they project, those truths are conveniently cropped out. Behind every seemingly better life is a real imperfect human, uncertain, vulnerable, and afraid, just like you. And when we turn the comparison in the other direction, toward those who seem to have less, it's tempting to weaponize their suffering as a way to dismiss our own. At least I'm not them, we whisper. But that too is a form of denial, a way of silencing our discomfort instead of facing it. Yes, gratitude is powerful. Yes, perspective matters. But your pain, your longing, your discomfort, they are valid in their own right. You don't need to be drowning to justify learning how to swim. You don't need to have it all to deserve rest. So what's the better way forward? Compare yourself to yourself, not to some imaginary ideal or picture-perfect influencer, but to the person you were last year, last month, even yesterday. Have you become more patient, more intentional, more honest? That's where growth lives. That's where peace begins. Ask yourself, when was the last time you looked at your own life with appreciation instead of judgment? When did you last honor your own path without filtering it through someone else's highlight reel? Comparison will always be around, but how much power it has over you, that's entirely up to you. The moment you stop sprinting in someone else's race, you finally start walking toward your own potential. You don't need to outshine anyone. You only need to outgrow the version of you that kept hiding, and that will always be enough. Now let's talk about one of the biggest barriers to that progress: fear, the quiet thief of potential, the silent killer of dreams, and the one thing that, if left unchecked, will keep you from ever living the life you were meant to live. Sometimes we don't just fear failure, we fear growth. We shrink ourselves to fit inside a version of life that feels safe, but in that safe space, we also trap our own potential. Fear whispers lies. It says, stay where you are. This is enough. And if we listen long enough, we start believing that discomfort is danger and staying stuck is survival. But the truth is, fear, when faced, doesn't grow stronger. It transforms. Because more often than not, fear is not a red light. It's a signal, a guide, a compass that points you towards something meaningful. If it didn't matter, it wouldn't scare you. Ask yourself, what are you afraid to do? To speak your truth? To be seen? To fail? Why do those fears hold so much power? Maybe because deep down, they're connected to something precious. Maybe being seen matters because you want to be known. Maybe success matters because it represents your deeper why. Fear doesn't lie, but it doesn't tell the whole truth either. And if you let it lead, it becomes your master. But when you challenge it, it becomes your mirror. It reflects your values, your hopes, your hidden strength. Nietzsche said it best: he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Purpose is the antidote to panic. When your reason is louder than your resistance, courage becomes possible. Not because fear disappears, but because you choose to move anyway. You speak, even when your voice shakes. You act, even when your hands tremble. You begin, because standing still has become the greater risk. And that's the breakthrough. You don't wait for confidence, you build it in motion. So what can you do today that fear has been blocking? Write it down, name it, face it. Because fear, when obeyed, multiplies. But when confronted, it softens. It loses shape. It loses power. And from that moment, you start reclaiming yours. Now let's move to another hard, liberating truth, one that sneaks up on all of us. Most of our disappointment doesn't come from life itself. It comes from our expectations of life, coming from the realization that expectations, especially rigid ones, are often the hidden roots of our suffering. We now confront a truth that's even more personal. The life you're living is not just happening to you, it's being shaped by you. 12. You live the life you create for yourself. What if everything around you, your routines, your relationships, your current emotional state, is a mirror reflecting what you've accepted, chosen, or tolerated over time? It's a confronting thought, one that peels back the illusion that life is simply a series of external events out of our control. Yes, life can be unfair. People can betray us. Circumstances can be cruel. But beyond all that, there's your response, your role in the architecture of your own reality. It's tempting to blame, to point the finger outward and say, "This isn't my fault." And in many cases, that's true. You didn't choose your upbringing. You didn't choose your early wounds. But there comes a moment when you realize no one else is responsible for what you do with your pain. That moment is where your power lives. You are not just surviving this life. You are designing it, choice by choice, habit by habit, belief by belief. And that doesn't mean every hardship was earned, but it does mean every breakthrough must be claimed. Carl Jung put it best when he said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams? Who looks inside awakes?" We spend so much of our time trying to get life right on the outside, fixing the appearance, chasing validation, securing external wins, while inside we're unclear, disconnected, even asleep. But real change starts inward, not with a new job or a new partner or a new city, but with a new lens, a new standard, a new sense of ownership over the life you're creating. So ask yourself, what have I allowed that no longer serves me? What am I repeating that keeps me small? What choices am I making today that shape the life I'll wake up to tomorrow? Because your life isn't just unfolding, it's being built. And the builder is you. Let's now step into our final reflection, one that invites you not just to understand these truths, but to live them. We ended with a powerful realization. Your life isn't something you find. It's something you build. And what you build begins with what you believe. You see, holding on to the role of the victim can feel oddly comforting. It offers a ready-made story, a shield from change, a reason to stay exactly where you are. But while that story might give you something to lean on, it also quietly robs you of your power. Because the longer you believe that your life is someone else's responsibility, the longer you remain stuck, waiting for someone else to rescue you from a reality only you can rewrite. But here's the truth you might have forgotten. You are not powerless. In fact, you are shaping your life right now through every thought you allow, every word you speak, every boundary you set or fail to set, and every small choice you make from the moment you wake up. You are, piece by piece, either building a life aligned with your truth or drifting deeper into a version shaped by fear and habit. So the question is not if you're creating your life. The real question is, what kind of life are you creating? Is it one built on fear, avoidance, and reaction? Or one shaped with clarity, vision, and responsibility? You don't need all the answers to begin again. You just need one honest moment, one brave shift, one simple step. So pause and ask yourself, if I woke up tomorrow with no pressure, no guilt, no fear, just a clean slate, what kind of life would I want to build? And more importantly, what's stopping me from starting that today? You're not stuck. You're just in a loop. And loops can be broken. Once you see the pattern, you can interrupt it. You can start choosing differently, choosing in alignment with who you truly want to become. That means saying no to roles you've outgrown, saying no to people, habits, and environments that drain you, saying yes to stillness, to meaning, to joy, to effort that feels like you. That's what building your life looks like, from the inside out. So now you've walked through them, 12 truths, and no, they don't flatter your ego. They don't sugarcoat the journey, but they do something more important. They set you free. They give you something precious in a world full of noise, clarity, clarity that acts like a compass. Because once you stop fighting the truth, you can start living in harmony with it. You stop surviving life and start shaping it. These truths aren't here to discourage you. They're here to pull you out of the lies that have kept you small. The lie that you need to be perfect. The lie that you're being constantly watched. The lie that you'll finally be enough once you get more, do more, be more. You don't need to become someone else. You just need to return to who you are, fully and without apology. Yes, truth can be sharp, but it also heals. Because when you finally face what's real, you stop building castles on sand. You stop waiting for permission. You stop living on borrowed identities. The Stoics understood this. Carl Jung understood this. Enze understood this. That happiness isn't found in some fantasy life. It's found in embracing reality and choosing to live it with intention, strength, and quiet purpose. So take a breath. Let these truths settle in. Let them disturb the parts of you that are ready to grow. And then let them lead you, one honest choice at a time, toward a life that doesn't just look right, but feels right. Not perfect, not easy, but real. If this episode gave you something meaningful, something that helped you see clearer, breathe deeper, or feel less alone, consider subscribing, sharing, or simply sitting with what struck you the most. And remember this, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be honest. And once you are, that's when your real life begins.